Hello, this is Neil Foote, President of the National Black Public Relations Society. Welcome to our first in a series of webinars over the course of the year discussing critical issues that affect our industry. I want to thank our partners at the University of North Texas and Edelman, one of our longtime partners with NBPRS. The National Black Public Relations Society is an 18-year-old organization dedicated to media professionals, promoting opportunities in job development, media image, and diversity. Our special presenter today, who will be talking to us about millennials, and I'll briefly introduce her in a second, will be Amaris Noble, Manager of Global Marketing at Edelman. She has an extensive career in media relations and public relations. She joined the Edelman Global Marketing team from NBC Universal, where she worked on any number of brands, partnering with the USA Network and Sci-Fi Networks. She also has worked on the department's first formalized plan to maximize branded entertainment opportunities to grow sales revenue across those networks. Our client base over the course of the years has included NASCAR, NBC Universal, as well as a wide range of major brands, including Unilever, Pfizer, PepsiCo, Starbucks, and Time Warner Cable. Today's conversation, U.S. Millennials, One Generation, Many Diverse Perspectives. As part of our presentation today, Amaris will present her work. She has a great presentation today, including some audiovisual presentations. You all will be on mute for this conversation today. You will see a chat function. If you're new to go to training, you'll see a chat function where you can post your questions throughout the course of the presentation. And those questions I'll be moderating, and we'll be glad to pose those to Amaris throughout the course of her presentation. We'll also leave some time after her presentation to address any outstanding questions. Amaris, welcome to our webinar today. Thanks for taking the time.
Of course. Thank you so much, Neil. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy days to join us for what I hope will be an informative and engaging discussion around an important and influential generation, millennials in the U.S. So I think we should just dive right in. People, especially marketers, have been trying to crack the millennial code for a while now. There's tons and tons of research out there on this audience, but much of that research refers to millennials as if they're one homogeneous group, and we know that they're anything but that. Millennials in America are diverse on so many different levels. They have different values and perspectives that have been shaped by their cultural backgrounds and how they grew up. For communications and marketing professionals, understanding the nuances of this unique generation, so what they value, how they operate, it's imperative to our business on so many fronts. And this topic is especially important to me because I just happen to be a millennial. I graduated from college, Howard University, shout out to any HU grads on the line, when the economy was really at its worst. And I know how it feels to be stereotyped based on my birthday. Walking into a meeting or at work, or turning on my TV, or just scrolling through my Twitter feed and seeing programs and campaigns that are supposed to be targeting me that truthfully miss the mark. So I want this presentation to be, less of me talking at you. Well, it'll be a little bit of that in the beginning, and spitting stats, but more of a discussion. So if you have questions, like Neil mentioned, please use the chat function to ask them in real time, and we'll discuss them together once we've gone through the presentation. So here's just a really quick look at what we'll cover during our time together. I'm going to talk about who millennials in the U.S. are, what they're all about, so what do they value, where and how they interact, and then how they engage, or how to engage them. And we'll explore that from an internal perspective. So as employers and as managers, what do you need to be thinking about in the workplace when working with millennials? And then also on the external front. So what do we need to be conscious of as far as programming and our marketing efforts when targeting this group? And then we'll wrap it up with some key takeaways. So who are U.S. millennials? First off, millennials are the biggest generation in America today at 83.1 million, which is more than a quarter of the nation's population. That's huge. They're also the most diverse, and that's really what's at the center of who they are and what they're all about. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 44.2% of millennials in the U.S. are a part of a diverse community or ethnic group, and 1/4 speak a language other than English at home. And just going back, in terms of age, they're 18 to 34 years old, which is a really broad range. So you have folks that are a part of one group, but some are, just starting college, and then you have others who have been in the workforce for a while and are starting to embark on major life milestones like buying a house and starting a family. According to a study that Edelman commissioned on U.S. millennials and money this past February, 1 in 3 U.S. millennials are married, and 1 in 2 have kids. And more than half of respondents of that study, and each segment that we looked at, so Blacks, Asians, Hispanic, and Latinos, said that they supported their household financially. So, we have folks on the latter end of the spectrum that are really beginning to experience life in a different way than those that are, on the 18, 19, 20 range. And they're also highly influential. I won't go through all the stats on the slide, but they have a buying power of 1.3 trillion, and they're also the most educated generation, with 1/3 of millennials ages 26 to 34 having earned at least a 4-year college degree. So despite all these positive, impressive statistics, millennials have gotten a bad rap over the past few years. I'm sure everyone here has read an article on, it talks about how self-absorbed and lazy and overconfident this group is, and how they're these like moochers who would live in their mommy and daddy's basement indefinitely after college if they were given the chance. But being a millennial myself, I feel like I have the authority to say these stereotypes aren't accurate, and we'll uncover why throughout the conversation. So what are U.S. millennials really about? So if we take a few steps back, there are specific macro trends and societal moments this group has lived through that have had a strong influence on their core beliefs and behaviors. And the first one is the Great Recession. Millennials are the first in the modern era to have higher levels of student loan, poverty, unemployment, lower levels of wealth and personal income than Gen Xers and Boomers had at the same stage of their life cycles. And a Pew Research study reported unemployment rates for millennials are typically double the national average. They're also byproducts of immigration. While the numbers of Boomers grew due to a high number of births, millennial growth has largely been a result of immigration. Millennials are the most racially and ethnically diverse generation ever, which we discussed before, which means that they're much more receptive to other cultures. Today, about half of newborns in America are non-white, and the U.S. Census Bureau projects that the full U.S. population will be a majority non-white sometime in 2043. They're also digital natives. They're the only generation that didn't have to adapt to new digital platforms and technologies that have emerged over the years. So digital has really been a part of who they are and their daily lives since the beginning. And finally, urban migration has impacted who they are and how they live. They like having the world at their fingertips. With the resurgence of cities as centers of economic energy and vitality, the majority are opting to live in the urban areas versus moving out to the burbs. Because that's where opportunities are more promising for them, and they feel that culture is everywhere around them. So what does that mean? As a result, millennials have become adapters. They're a generation of optimists fueled by the desire to shape the world in which they thrive. And it's really because they've had to, based on the cards that they were dealt. I know that sounds negative, but I don't mean it that way. So despite the Great Recession and other challenges, millennials are a generation of optimists, which we just mentioned. According to USA Today's Rock the Vote poll of 18 and 34-year-olds, more than 2/3 of U.S. millennials predict they'll be more successful in their professional lives than their parents were. And they've also started to redefine what the American dream means to them. So a recent study on millennials and money that Edelman conducted asked respondents to define their definition of the American dream. And 8 in 10 of U.S. millennials believe their American dream is achievable, and it's about much more than money. So it's not about, being able to graduate with my degree, get a job, buy a house in the suburbs with a white picket fence, and have a dog and a family and 1.5 kids. It's more about, or we heard them say things like, having a stable future without worry, being able to support oneself and one's family, being debt-free, being able to spend time and money on things that are meaningful. And these are over stuff like, owning luxury items or having an abundance of material things. So to millennials, the American dream is about being happy, living life, and being able to care for themselves and those that they care about. Millennials are also a generation with an entrepreneurial mindset. Edelman also commissioned a study on millennials called 8095, and it surveyed 4,000 millennials in 11 countries. And the study revealed that nearly half of millennials aspire to own their own company. In today's harsh economy, a lot of them realize that being an entrepreneurial and having that entrepreneurial spirit is most likely their best path to success. 60% of millennials consider themselves entrepreneurs, and 90% recognize entrepreneurship as a mentality. So it's not just about actually starting my own business, but more so a way of thinking and an approach. So, being able to make an impact and make a difference within a larger organization, if that's where they are. We talked about how millennials have been pegged as selfish, materialistic people, but research shows that they actually value experience over things. A recent global travel report revealed that when asked what things they want to do or have, travel topped the list for millennials over things like owning a vacation home or the latest technology or owning expensive jewelry. So again, living a happy life and doing things that excite them and broaden their understanding of the world in which they live is what they're really all about.
I just wanted to pause you right there, Amaris, and just welcome a few other attendees to our webinar today on U.S. Millennials. We're with Amaris Noble, who's Manager of Global Marketing for Edelman. For those of you who just joined us, feel free to post any questions that come to mind in the chat function on your screen. We've muted you all for the duration of the conversation, but please, if something comes to mind, post the question, and Amaris will be more than happy to respond to your question during the presentation, and we'll leave some time at the end to entertain your questions as well. Amaris, didn't mean to interrupt you, but just wanted to welcome those visitors, and I'll let you pick it up from here. Lots of great information so far. Thank you.
Of course. No, that was a good time to break. So now that we've gotten a better sense of who this group is, we talked about them being the largest generation, the most diverse generation. Let's take a look at how and where they interact. So sharing information helps to fuel their sense of self, and it's really at the crux of how they engage with each other and with brands. They share information to bring value and entertaining content to each other. Sharing information also helps them define themselves to others. So 68% say they share to show the world who they are and what matters to them. And that's according to Edelman's 8095 study that we referenced earlier. And sharing information also helps them stay connected. 78% say this is true according to that Edelman 8095 study. They say that sharing information online helps them stay connected to people that they might not otherwise stay in touch with. And finally, they share to feel fulfilled. 69% say it helps them feel like they're active participants in what's happening in the world around them. So if I'm tweeting or tweeting about a current topic, I'm not only just sharing my thoughts, but I'm a part of that conversation. I'm a part of that movement and that dialogue. So it's much more active versus passive. And as we all know, they prefer to share information and consume content via digital platforms. They spend 2.4 billion hours a week using digital media, and that's a lot of hours, which is more than a third of the time that all adults spend on social media. They have 85% own smartphones. They touch those smartphones 45 times a day. And they also have a more positive view of technology than other generations do, and they use it to manage their lives. More than 74% feel that new technology makes their lives easier. 54% feel new technology helps them be closer to their friends and family. And in terms of making their lives easier. So I don't just have a whole bunch of games on my smartphone, but I've got apps that are going to help me manage my budget or organize my day. And then 5 out of 6 connect with companies on social media networks. So social is also a place where brands can engage, and it's a valuable, important touch point. And digital usage and engagement on social platforms and digital platforms are even higher among diverse communities. And I won't go through all of these stats, but 68% of Blacks use social networking sites. 85% of Hispanics online are ages 18 to 29. So it's really the members of these diverse communities that are the most active on these platforms. And we know that a large majority of millennials are non-white. So this is really the meat of our discussion today, how to engage millennials. As communications and marketing professionals, we're charged with pitching stories and building and executing programs and campaigns on behalf of our clients that reach, engage, and are supposed to drive action at the end of the day. And it's impossible to come up with a campaign that effectively targets an audience if you don't understand them first. So we'll use the rest of our time talking about approaches to engaging millennials in the workplace. So if you're a Gen Xer managing a 24-year-old, this section is for you. And insights that will help us make sure our marketing efforts and client programming include and accurately target this generation. Millennials are the largest generation in the American workforce today at 53.8 million. So they're the largest in the U.S. period, and which makes them also the largest in the American workforce. And while many of the nearly 80 million millennials in the U.S. are just starting their careers, by 2030, they're projected to make up 75% of the American workforce. That's a humongous chunk. That's the majority. So we'll spend a little bit of time on this slide. When millennials enter the workforce, they bring with them new perceptions of what office life should be like and what relationships between their employer and employees need to look like. So here are some practical tips and things to just begin thinking about when engaging millennials at work. But before we jump into this section, I just had to say it. When I was even looking for images for this particular slide, I just want to throw it out there. Ping pong tables and like weekly office happy hours and, fancy espresso machines, like those aren't the answers to happy, inclusive workforces. It's instead of items or perks, the focus of employers and managers should really be on building a corporate community that truly inspires and engages multi-generational workforces. And that means not just courting millennials, but integrating their skills and tapping into their unique perspectives and experiences to rejuvenate the workforce. So, based on who they are and their unique kind of approaches and ways of thinking, learn how to use that and tap into that to make the office environment and culture that much better. Last June, Edelman's employee engagement group released its perspective on how to make meaningful connections with millennials at work, and connections that deepen engagement that build trust and accelerate business performance. We talked about by 2030, 75% of the workforce is going to be all millennials. So it's no surprise that employers are trying to, understand this group now to attract, retain, and motivate them. And naturally, they're going to have some things in common just based on, the economic and social climates they grew up in, but they're still individuals at the end of the day with distinct personalities and goals. So when it comes to working with them at your job, 9 times out of 10, it's easiest just to ask them directly, like what matters to them. Have an open dialogue about it. Don't put too much pressure around it, especially in a manager and managee situation. So on a practical level and on a broader level, here are 5 things that millennials value about work and how employers and managers can better engage them. So the first here, up on our screens, help create opportunities for them to develop skills beyond their current role. According to a Forbes article published last fall, the average tenure of millennial employees is 2 years. In comparison, it's 5 years for Gen Xers and 7 years for baby boomers. So if you're thinking 2 years doesn't even seem like enough time to make a dent at a job, but because millennials embrace a strong entrepreneurial mindset, they often are on the lookout for opportunities that are going to allow them to continue to grow, even if that means grow up out of their current situation and onto something new. So they're not just antsy or job hopping because they're impatient. They're constantly looking for opportunities to grow and learn. So as managers and employers, why not give it to them? Be proactive about it. Invite them to attend senior level meetings with you. So that will also, just give them an opportunity to better understand the decision-making process and be in the room when real strategizing happens. Also keep it fresh, consider job rotations to give them exposure to different functions. And support continuous learning by encouraging them to attend conferences or workshops or trainings that your company might be providing. The second is help them stay globally connected. Because millennials are such a diverse group that value experiences, and many are continuously seeking opportunities to stretch themselves, learn and grow, which we talked about. So look for opportunities for your millennial employees to work abroad or use a foreign language at the job if it makes sense. We also talked about how sharing information helps them feel connected to others and more involved in what's happening around them. So consider identifying opportunities for them to connect with colleagues across the globe or across offices if it makes sense. The next point is providing real-time feedback, and this one is really big. The article that I mentioned earlier from Forbes, the title is Millennials in the Workplace. They don't need trophies, but they do want reinforcement. I don't know if you're familiar with that stereotype that, millennials, need a pat on the back for every little thing that they do. And that's not the case in the workforce. That's not where that's coming from. So give feedback on the spot, though, especially if employees are not meeting expectations so they can course correct. But reinforce a job well done as well with prompt recognition and thanks. And this will also help foster a mutual respect and really build that relationship. And in terms of channels for communication in the office, don't be afraid to think beyond email. I know we love a good email, but millennials, they move quickly, and digital and social is where they're engaging. So if your company has an instant messaging option, maybe try that out. Or communicating via text might help you stay closer to your millennial colleagues and provide, quick and real-time updates. The fourth is earning their trust as colleagues, and we talked about the theme of trust, and there's several themes that have just, emerged or continue to surface throughout this conversation. Millennials want managers that are less like a boss and more like coaches. So think of your relationship between you and your millennial colleagues as more of a partnership. Also, as the most connected generation to date, they value collaboration, and they thrive environments where people are working together and sharing ideas versus situations where they're just, taking notes in the back of a conference room and walking away with a lengthy to-do list. And it's so funny. It sounds weird to me at times when I say say, because I identify with most of these points so closely, and this one was a really big one for me. The opportunity to just feel like you're a part of the conversation, a part of the process, will make the world of a difference, and in the long run could result in a better, more informed product and idea. Millennial employees also expect greater accessibility to leadership. So they want to be able to talk to, senior leaders and learn from them. Also, according to a Pew Research Center report, if they were able to make their job more flexible, 64% of millennials want to occasionally work from home, and 66% would like to shift their hours a little bit. So that's not because they're lazy or they want to sleep in, like 9 o'clock is just way too early. It's because they base their performance on output rather than the time spent on the project. So I would rather, focus on what it is that I'm bringing to present to you or to show to you versus, focusing on how much time I logged to get it done. That's not where their emphasis and importance lies. So if it makes sense, maybe consider flexible scheduling or allowing employees to work from home if it works for you. And then finally, everyone, just ensure that everyone has a voice. Give millennials a way to provide meaningful feedback and input, and create an environment where differences of opinions are valued and explored and encouraged. As a manager, you can ask for volunteers to lead committees or to test new products or to pilot a new technology that the company is looking to launch. So I know that is a lot, so happy to answer any questions about any of those specific points, and also to provide some of those stats and those insights within each of these buckets if that's of interest to anyone.
Yeah, good. These are really great points, Amaris, because they get to some of the myths that are out there that we've heard, and some of the experiences that perhaps some of us as managers have encountered over the years. And I think you offer an interesting perspective of kind of the duality of saying, yes, I am one of these folks, and I also see how it plays out as a potential manager within a corporate workforce itself. What, from your personal experience and what your research shows, what are some of the kind of coping mechanisms on both sides? One is managers that you see some companies adapting, and then two, from you on how you've kind of adapted yourself. I would imagine working in some environments where you may be the only millennial in the room, and how you respond to those who may not, quote unquote, understand where you're coming from.
Oh, very good question, Neil. Thank you. That's huge. So from my perspective and just my experience, I'm someone, I always say, like, I'm a context person. It's really important for me to just understand the bigger picture so that I know how whatever I'm working on and my piece of the pie, how it fits in to the overarching strategy or whatever the vision is. So oftentimes, even especially early in my career, because I was just, wide-eyed and just trying to learn and soak up everything, and still am. But, at times it can look like you're, pushy, or you feel like, oh, I deserve to have a seat at the table. And that's not where it's coming from, and at least for myself, at all. And as far as, just dealing with that, and a coping mechanism, if you will, is approaching it less of kind of, hey, can I be a part of this, but more so from a spirit of collaboration. So positioning, the ask as, hey, I just really want to, be a part of this, and, really want everyone to be able to understand the full picture, and would love if I could help, contributing to this conversation, and let me know how I can, be a part of this. And I just think at the end of the day, it's really about your approach, and then that goes on both sides, So that's kind of how I've approached those kind of moments where it's uncomfortable, and the different groups or people might not really understand each other. But I feel like if it's in the spirit of collaboration, and you really just have a genuine interest, and you're being authentic and true to yourself and who you are, then there's an opportunity 9 times out of 10 to see eye to eye and figure out a situation that works for both people or both parties.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
Definitely. For those of you all who may just be joining us, and those of you who have been on the conversation so far, please feel free to post your questions or comments in the chat box on your screen in the toolbar that has been downloaded. We're with Amaris Noble, who's the manager of global marketing at Edelman. We're on the first of a series of webinars brought to you by the National Black Public Relations Society. So, Amaris, I know you have some more great nitty-gritty stuff to get into, so you take it from here.
All right. Okay, so now we talked a little bit or a lot about what it looks like and just some things to think about when engaging millennials in the workplace. Just some nuances and things to understand about them and their approaches to things, so that there is that better, sorry about that, understanding of where both parties are coming from.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
So now, so the final slides we're really just going to cover off on a few things to consider when targeting this group via programming and marketing. So from an external standpoint, just like anyone else, millennials don't like to be talked at or to have products and messages shoved down their throats. That was kind of the old school, way of advertising, just, splashing everything everywhere. People will see it, therefore people will like it and people will buy it. That's not the approach anymore. Attention has to really be earned. You have to take the time to understand the consumer, to figure out who they are, and to tailor your messages and your programming to those nuances. And also, consumers are just a little bit, they're more savvy, they're smarter, and nowadays, especially with the, access to information, so, they'll call you out if you're, taking that talk at approach. They value engagement that's authentic. And as a result, this makes them more inclined at times to trust their peers and people like them, their family, over brands and salespeople. So brands and marketers need to approach them as partners. We keep hearing this, idea of partnership, collaboration, working with them, and offer useful information and tools that are relevant and that will improve their lives. Customization and relevance are key in marketing to millennials. When you're building your campaigns, keep in mind that they respond positively to content that's tailored to their age, tailored to where they are. So be mindful of the platforms and the vehicles that you're choosing to deliver your messages, because everything has to match, and tailored to their cultural needs. Study your audience. Figure out their demo and their psychographics. How do they feel about certain issues? Where are they coming from? Where do they live? Like, what does their day-to-day look like? So, millennial males is a broad segment. That should not be, your audience, in my opinion. Dig deeper and get specific, because that's how you're going to really come up with a programming that really strikes the chord and resonates. And at the end of the day, it's really all about the approach. Millennials are surprisingly open to brand engagement and advertising if brands have the right approach. Only 3% say all advertising is boring. 80% want brands to entertain them. 64% respond positively to content that's useful. So make sure your approach and your content is relevant and authentic. And I want to close by just sharing 2 case studies of 2 Edelman clients that I think are gold star examples of brands that have really taken the time to understand their audience, and as a result have executed campaigns and have created brand identities that resonate and have helped move the needle for their businesses. So the first example is Axe, and this one is more so, figuring out the target and taking those insights and nuances and applying them to, what their brand stands for. All right. We're going to have to go to YouTube for this.
Okay.
Axe has always been about helping the guy get the girl. Axe effect was simple. Guys sprayed Axe, girls get running. But over time, that Axe effect wore off. Ignorant and insecure. It was time to ask ourselves, who is the real Axe fan? This is a different guy than the one we once knew. Being macho is outdated. Attraction is complicated. That one-straighted friend zone, it's not so scary after all. The average guy doesn't just want to get the girl. He wants to get the girl. Her opinion of him and of Axe matters. To move from a brand our guy grows out of to a brand we can grow with, we need to update the way we talk to him. It all starts on social. We help our fans be more awesome, funny, and cool every day. We give him a language he can use to express himself, because when our guy acts, speaks, and posts with confidence, the girls take notice. We remix on-the-rise trends and street-level insights to create original content and experiences. We're partnering with up-and-coming influencers, some of our fans themselves, so Axe can spark culture, not follow it. We're already seeing a difference, and we're only getting started.
Okay, and the second one is a Dove campaign. These are both Unilever brands, and this is for their Speak Beautiful campaign.
Dove partners with Twitter to change the way that women talk about beauty on social media. Dove and Twitter analyze user behavior, language, and data. Together, they uncovered insights about how women discuss beauty online with the goal of inspiring real, positive change. Dove launched the Speak Beautiful campaign to encourage women to change the way they talk about beauty online. They created a 30-second TV spot featuring actual tweets from real women during ABC's Oscars red carpet. This cultural moment was an ideal platform to ensure the campaign received maximum exposure. But it didn't end there. Twitter developed the first of its kind custom algorithm to identify negative beauty conversations women were having online. Dove engaged with women in real time, delivering personalized, positive messages of encouragement. Thank you for joining us. Be beautiful. Keep it up. Dove then created the first ever branded reverb and real-time data visualization, tracking Speak Beautiful mentions and sentiments. With the support of influential voices such as Ariana Huffington and Amy Poehler, Speak Beautiful reached trending status. Both real women and the media have embraced the campaign, with top-tier media outlets celebrating the program. Tweet your messages of inspiration using the hashtag #SpeakBeautiful. Twitter saw a 30% drop in negative tweets and a 69% increase in positive tweets. Beyond Oscar night, Speak Beautiful continues to strike a chord with women everywhere, accounting for more than 111,000 mentions on Twitter, 93,000 unique users, and nearly 800 million social impressions. By encouraging women to reconsider the words they use, Dove has shifted the conversation and inspired individuals to speak beautiful, one tweet at a time.
All right. Okay. So I thought Axe was an awesome example of a brand that took the time and invested the resources to truly understand their consumer and what was important to him and how he thought. Applying those insights to figure out how their products could help him achieve his goals. Looking and smelling fresh and getting the girl at the end of the day. And the Dove Speak Beautiful campaign is one of my favorites too. It targeted young women, so the brand I thought was very strategic in partnering with Twitter, as that's where their target is, and that's where she was expressing her views and perspectives of beauty. And it's a really strong example of the response that you get when you center your campaign on a topic that your target cares about and that they're already thinking about and already talking about and can relate to. And then also, when you choose the right medium to deliver that message. Because you can have a great message, a great campaign, but if the platform doesn't right, there's no connection. So here are a few takeaways. What did we learn? What did we hear? U.S. millennials are the biggest and the most diverse generation in the U.S. They're optimistic and value experiences over things. Information sharing fuels their sense of self. And engaging millennials in the workplace means earning their trust and creating an environment where they can learn and share. And finally, they're open to hearing about brands if the approach is right. So that is all I have to go through. I hope everyone found this information interesting and then also useful. And as I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of information out there on this segment. So we could have been talking all day, but really wanted to provide a more high-level view of who the audience is, to spark a conversation and to hopefully give you some insights and some real tools that you can apply to your day-to-day and incorporate into your recommendations and programs for your clients. So,
Amaris, this has been fantastic. Great insight and great information. I had a couple of questions to run by you. You mentioned, this notion of digital natives. You see Amaris's contact information here on the screen. So certainly, if you have other questions and want to address those to her directly, please use her email. We will archive this presentation and post it on the NBPRS.org site probably within the next few days. So if you want to go back and kind of listen more closely, you'll be able to do that, or tell your friends about it. But I was curious, Amaris, on this sense of kind of how we best, as public relations professionals, how we best communicate our messages and our ideas and stories. Is it all digital? Are there any where does traditional, whether that's print or television, play into this at all?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And when putting this together too, I did think about was very digital focused, but I think you're exactly right. Traditional is still relevant. Newspapers are still relevant. Magazines are still relevant. And I think they're all, the way that folks are consuming content nowadays, it's all the platforms are kind of merging, right? So I can read a New York Times article online if I want to, or I can read it, the print version and just walk to my local store or bodega here in New York. So I think the media landscape is really changing. But there's always the anchor, I think, of media and platforms is print, but there's really a convergence nowadays. So it's figuring out from a programming standpoint and like a messaging standpoint what medium will get you the most, I think, stickiness. Who are you trying to reach? What is the message? And based on those two things, which platform makes the most sense? Because it's all about the content being relevant and making sense for who you're going after, and that will help you think through which platform. If, for example, you might be trying to reach a very select niche, small group of influencers with your campaign. If you're Nike and you're launching a program for sneakerheads or folks that are in the sneaker culture, that's a very narrow lane, right? So if going to the platforms and the publications that group reads and those sites that they visit, that's how you figure out where you need to be. So it's really just thinking about the audience, the content, and that'll help you figure out the platform type. Does that make sense?
Yes. We have a question from Glennis Curry. I am on the Gen X millennial cusp, and I manage millennials on my team. What do you find to be the best communication methods for interpersonal communications with millennials outside of email?
Ah, that's a great question. And personally, the way that I have approached this, because I've had managers that are who are also millennials, who might be at a different end of the spectrum, but we're in the same generation. And then I've also had managers that are not, they're Gen Xers and even boomers. And what I've always done is just ask them, how do you want to do this? What's the best way for us to stay connected? And based on what works for both of you, I think is really the way to go. Sometimes it is text message. Like I had my last manager at NBC Universal. She was 31. And I would email her things, and I would put flag it if it was really important, and that just wasn't the best way to get her. The best way to get her was texting her and saying, hey, FYI, just a heads up, or sent you something about this. Let me know what you think about this. And then she would get to my texts much quicker than she would get to my emails. And that's actually what I prefer too. But it's really, I think, having a conversation about like what makes sense so that instead of like guessing.
Mm-hmm. Great.
In my opinion.
Yeah, no, great answer, which is kind of understanding how best to get that response and engage. One of the other questions I noticed from the kind of the Axe campaign and the Dove campaign that seems to give us some insights on how we position messages is how to, both of those campaigns really were less buy my product because it's great, but join me in talking about my product and what you think about yourself and how this product can help you. Is that a nuance in how marketers have to position their products now, as opposed to just buy this because we want you to buy it because it's a great price, but buy it because you're part of changing yourself and part of a broader movement?
Ooh, that is a great question. So I think it's more of the audience relating to and connecting with brands that stand for something. So we talked about millennials, wanting information and wanting products that are going to be useful. So I'm not going to just buy your shampoo because you say it's the best shampoo in the market. You don't need to walk me through the ingredients. Like that's not what's going to get me. Causes, things that mean something, a shared sense of purpose. Edelman has puts out an annual study called the Trust Barometer, and it really explores, how people feel about different industries, media and government, etc. And it's really a shared sense of purpose that really builds a strong relationship. So from a marketing perspective, it's less of, I have this soap and it's an awesome line of soap, and because it's awesome, that's why you need to buy it. It's okay. Who are my audience? Who is my target? What do they care about? What do I stand for as a brand? Because it also doesn't need to be just figuring out who you're talking to and then like, okay, how can I tailor my messages to reach them? It's finding that shared sense of purpose so that the relationship is authentic and genuine, and then creating your programming and your messaging around that purpose, because it just provides and makes way for an authentic connection. So I'm thinking about Dove when I'm thinking about my self-esteem or how I think about myself, or beauty in general, and I'm therefore eventually ties back to brand loyalty. So I'm thinking about Dove about these other things, and then I try their product and I like the product. So there's more than just that point of purchase that's made me be loyal to this particular brand.
Excellent. That's right on point, because that's clearly those campaigns that you share with us, and we see more of that along those lines, is even during some of the Super Bowl ads, we see more of that kind of call to action and engagement, which I guess is I think the other kind of key term here. While you don't specifically say it, but why don't you just talk briefly about the notion of engagement from a messaging standpoint and how that plays a role in how we reach out to this audience?
Yeah, that's a really great point. Engagement is critical. So in addition to that shared sense of purpose or that shared idea or that shared experience, give them a way to connect and interact with you, because that also strengthens the relationship. So I think the Dove campaign was a really great example. So not only did they partner with Twitter so that because that's where their target engages and where they are, but it also provides them with like a next step and a way for them to connect with the brand. So that is key, that call to action. And I think just campaigns that kind of, organically build those opportunities into their tactics and their strategies, really see the most, results or rewards.
Excellent. Well, Amaris, this has been a really fascinating conversation, and as you mentioned, there's so many nuances to this segment that we could spend probably another 2 or 3 sessions, and we may want to look at one of the verticals here in a deeper way, perhaps down the future, but down the road in the future. But I want to thank you for taking the time today of sharing your expertise. Today, I want to thank Edelman for sponsoring this webinar today, along with the University of North Texas, to share the platform with us. I want to thank the participants here who hopefully will further engage with you independently, Amaris, on this great presentation. For those of you, once again, if you missed it today and want to join in with us, this will be archived and shared on the NBPRS.org website. For those of you interested in learning more about NBPRS.org, the National Black Public Relations Society, please join us on the website. Please feel free to take note and save the date for our annual conference in Chicago on October 27th and 28th in downtown Chicago. Stay tuned for more information about that. Once again, Amaris, thank you so much for this great presentation today.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and we look forward to you all joining us in future conversations. Stay tuned for more updates from NBPRS about future webinars. Thanks, and you all have a wonderful day.